it's funny and maybe a little sad, I don't know, that when I look back on certain times in my life, what I remember most is what I happened to be binge watching at the time. In the 2 weeks leading up to my first year at university, I absorbed every nostalgia critic video I could straight into my eyeballs, so I can only assume I was in a pretty dark place at the time. The beginning of my third year, I rewatched the entirety of Friends, a little bit because I wouldn't suffer for not being able to pay attention on any given day, and a little bit because Friends has always fascinated me by being one of those shows where the main cast are terrible people in a way that generally isn't addressed. And when I bring up Friends here, I'm not talking about the product of its time like poorly aged jokes as much as I'm talking about actions the characters take for the sake of comedy that would be really fucked up outside of the context of a sitcom, but that seem funny in context because of a laugh track and colours. Of course, this is a side effect of sitcoms, like Friends in general. The main cast of The Big Bang Theory, to use an example I just pulled out of my arse, suffer from the same side effects that befall the Friends. Ross and Leonard are both similar to guys I dated as a student, and that is not a compliment to anyone. And other shows have used this aspect of the sitcom to, create comedy from the other side. Take It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, a show which takes a cast of accidental assholes and turns them into, it just turns them into assholes. Enter Kevin Can F Himself. Kevin Can F Himself follows Allison McRoberts, your typical tired, frustrated sitcom wife stuck with a self-centered man-child for a husband. Whenever Kevin is around, the show plays out like a traditional multi-camera sitcom, complete with canned laughter, but as soon as he's gone, the show turns into a single-camera drama, as we follow Allison in her attempts to escape Kevin and the confines of her unsatisfactory life. The show stars Annie Murphy as Allison, which is the reason I originally watched the show, as her performance as Alexis was, for me, the highlight of Schitt's Creek. I also want to mention here that the show also features Robin Lord Taylor as the not-so-lovable criminal Nick, which just wanted to mention for no particular reason. Take the first episode as an illustration of the show. The episode opens with Kevin and his friends messing around in the sitcom world. Kevin and Allison's anniversary is coming up, and Kevin is preparing for their usual rager. When Allison suggests something more grown up, she is immediately shut down. As you'd probably expect, this is generally what happens when Allison tries to act like a grown-up. Not only that, but she's continuously outright insulted by Kevin's best friend in a way that you'd expect from this style of sitcom, but in this context it really doesn't sit right. As soon as Allison leaves the room, everything changes. The lighting, the colours, the whole tone of the show shifts to the world as Allison perceives it, as a place that really kind of sucks. And we get the opening titles, which I think do a pretty good job at getting across the feeling of being trapped in Kevin's sitcom world. The episode continues with Allison going about her daily life, completing errands and going to work. It's mostly pretty basic daily life stuff at this point in the show, but for Allison, it seems like one thing is going wrong after another. There's cockroaches in the house, her sweater unravels, she has food on her face when she talks to the judgmental women at the makeup counter, and we've all had mornings like that. Allison feels very real here, and segments like these do a pretty good job of taking the cyclical nature of the sitcom and making you feel it in real life. The B-plot in each episode is whatever Kevin happens to be doing at the time, which makes sense, sure. These stories will play out like a typical sitcom story. Your relatively small conundrum like being stuck in a bathroom in your dumb leather pants or having a turkey stuck on your head for a bit. The trouble with these B-plots is, while I do understand why they're always far less interesting than what Allison's up to, especially when Kevin's actions in the episode barely tie into what Allison is doing, or don't tie in at all. And okay, I'm going to be honest, this lull in each episode feels kind of inevitable. The deliberate choice was made to have Kevin's stories play out like an episode of Friends, say. I expect them to be less interesting than a woman's plan to escape her husband, which is exactly the kind of shit I eat up, but it still kind of sucks to feel like you're just sitting through all the shit you don't care about until you get back to the real story. It's the characters who exist outside of Kevin's sitcom land who are actually interesting to watch because they get to be explored in depth, their true colours revealed over time. Like Sam. Sam can fuck himself. And okay, not even kidding. Until right fucking now, I'd had this guy's name written down as Ben. Who the fuck is Ben? did I even watch the show? What is happening right now? Okay, squaring back in on what brought me to this video. Ultimately, it doesn't matter too much that I don't give two shits about Kevin, because the thing that really drew me to this show is how it uses the tropes of the sitcom. And not in Kevin's scenes, but in Allison's. You know, there are shows which use the aesthetics of a sitcom in a way which ultimately doesn't mean as much as it could, but Kevin Can F Himself does something really pointed and effective with its use of the sitcom that I find to be the thing which hit me emotionally. It's pretty bog standard in your traditional sitcom for whatever antics that it's you to be wrapped up neatly by the end of the episode, by design written so that a viewer can tune into a rerun or random episode and get a full complete story regardless of their history with the show. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia also uses this idea of everything going back to normal by the end of the episode. In Sunny's case, it feels like the gang live in this little sitcom bubble in the way that Kevin lives in his sitcom world. For the gang, things return to the status quo at the end of the episode, while their actions have a real-world consequence for the people around them. This accentuates the idea that Sunny shares with Kevin Can F Himself. Sitcom characters are dicks.
I know you think you're some everyday hero, but you're just a dick, Kevin.
Kevin Can F Himself uses this return to the status quo in its storytelling, and uses it to Kevin's advantage. Kevin lives in a sitcom world where everything is bright and colourful, and whatever hardships he faces can be solved with 20 minutes and some slapstick. He doesn't have to worry because even when his schemes don't come to fruition, on a larger scale, everything always goes his way and always has. He's manipulative and he's selfish, but he doesn't really face any consequences for that. And Allison will always be there because in his world, everything significant is pretty much going to stay the same. He can take her for granted without worrying about her leaving. The cycle in Kevin's sitcom world is one of Allison's biggest obstacles throughout the show. Things are a certain way when the show starts, and thanks to sitcom magic, things are pretty much going to stay like that. Okay, let me give a specific example so it's crystal clear what I'm talking about. In episode 2, Kevin buys a sweatshirt once worn by a sportsman whose name I cannot remember and will not be Googling. In an act of defiance, Allison smashes the frame and steals it. This theft triggers Kevin's sitcom storyline, wherein he has a feud with the neighbours after assuming it was they who took the sweatshirt, while Allison feels empowered wearing it while she continues her attempts to escape Kevin. In the end, however, Kevin is excited to buy a new shirt and no longer cares about the stolen one, essentially ruining Allison's act of defiance. And things like this keep happening to Allison. She acts out by stealing a lipstick, and it's the wrong fucking shade. The show manages to, pretty effectively I think, evoke that feeling of trying and not making any progress. You know how they say insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results? This is like being stuck in the opposite, where you try a bunch of different things, but find yourself stuck in the same place, like your life has no upward mobility and your goals stay just as far away. One criticism I've seen from people who couldn't get into the show is that the first episode drags in its slow pace. While I understand that slower pace adds to the feeling of being trapped that I've been talking about in this video. It combines with the narrative to evoke a feeling of time going too slow and too fast all at the same time. And I kind of vibe with that, especially with things being how they've been. I do feel like things are going too fast and too slow all at once. I feel like I've had 700 years on my hands and achieved nothing. I mean, the time I got 4 victory royales in a row was pretty cool, but it wasn't exactly something I told my parents about, so they knew they could be proud of me. This is normally the part of the video where I ask, what did we learn today, kids? Where we draw a conclusion that ties the video together with a cute little bow, and we'd go away with a greater understanding of the topic discussed. But I didn't come into this video wanting to write something that would get me a good grade from my least generous lecturer. I just wanted to talk about a show that resonated with me because I'm fucking depressed. And why exactly it resonated with me. I like to make video essays, I really do, but sometimes I only have the energy to watch an entire show in one day, or switch between 4 different Pokemon challenge streams in an endless ADHD cycle. And that's okay. Okay, that's it. We're done. That's the fucking end of the video. Like, subscribe, follow me on Twitch. I have nothing else for you. I'm going to go lie face down on the floor now. Thank you very much for watching. Ciao.